So my name's Liz Rayner and I'm with Zoe at Lethbridge and Dean Lubin. And the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to present the result of our project on Desmos, which some of you may have used, but some of you may not have done. So my colleague Dean, he's going to put a link in the chat box for you and ask you to join the session that we're going to be doing. And that session you can join. And you can log in with Desmos if you wish to with your account. With an account. If you don't have an account, it doesn't matter, it will still work. But if you wish to get back to this presentation later, you can go on that route. Okay, so I'll just leave you a moment to follow the link in the chat box. And you will see an activity that you can see, which allows you to just say something about how you feel about today. And I'm sharing at the moment the summary teacher view with you, just so that we can see where we've got to. Okay, and if you are not on yet, you'll be able to continue joining, but I'm going to pause the screen that we're at the introduction screens that we're on in about another 30 seconds to actually start talking about our project. So the action research team that we had were, as was just been said, Byron, Dean, myself and Zoe, and we're at Leighton Sixth Form based in East London, and you can read a bit about us there. We're reasonably unique in that everybody who has a maths grade less than grade 4 does a GCSE resit course. So we have people with grades 1s and 2s and they do a 2-year GCSE, and people with a grade 3 do a 1-year GCSE. And our research question was, how could blended learning be used to engage the students in the learning experience? Now, this was particularly relevant to us because our senior leadership team made a decision back in September, because the pandemic rates were very high here, to have all courses as some mix of blended learning. And so it was particularly relevant to all of us. We found with the literature review that's here, there wasn't a lot of literature which was particularly helpful to us, and most of it came from FE. We trialled a variety of platforms initially in the autumn term when we were on a mix of 50-50 face-to-face and online learning. And we tried things like Jamboard, Whiteboard Fi and Dr. Frost Maths. But the package that we eventually chose was Desmos, not least because it was designed with maths pedagogy in mind, and it allowed the students to be wrong in interesting ways. And it was compatible with a wide range of devices. Now, during the time that we were actually working with our students, we had several surveys, and one of the issues these surveys brought to light was the access to technology and the home learning environment, and some of the difficulties that the students had. Even with that, this central graph here shows that more than 50% of them felt that the technology helped them make progress. But you can read the screen for yourself. There's the typical sorts of things that are online. We've heard from other people. They have to share laptops with a sister, even parents, for example, who were working online from home during the pandemic. And lack of physical space was a real problem for our students. But we found lots of advantages as well. And the majority of students found that using technology improved their learning. And indeed, they enjoyed it. So they found it helped a lot to improve. And actually working in their own environment actually helped some better than working in class, which was quite a surprise to us. And one of the comments we got back was that less talking needed to be done by teachers so they could get going with things. We chose 3 different Desmos activities to focus on that were tied to the scheme of work. Ratio is about paint mixing, and it was designed by Desmos. Proportional reasoning is a lesson based on the standards unit N6 lesson, and we used a lot of double number line in our work for the mastery approach that we were doing as a department, and we designed that ourselves. And then we took another lesson, simultaneous equations, which was designed by another teacher. And so we had 3 different, and we adapted, and we had 3 different, therefore, approaches. Okay, so that's how we got going. So what we're going to ask you to do, for you to do now, is actually to do some of this in practice. Okay, and I'm going to ask you, says her having difficulty reaching the screen that I want, to actually have a go at these activities. Okay, so if you move on to the Desmos that you have logged onto, you'll see part of the paint lesson that we were doing. And I'm going to hand them back over to Zoe. So we'll just give you some time to have a go through this screen, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Liz. So we'll give you 5 minutes to have a look at those slides. There's quite a few of them, but we'll leave you 5 minutes to explore. Okay, so 1 more minute on that. If you haven't got through all the slides, you might want to just flick forward. Slide 13 there. It's not a question, it's just for you to, if I can see from your answers to slide 2 that some of you haven't used Desmos too much. And so slide 13 is just to experience using sliders and seeing what Desmos can do graphically. So I'll be pausing the activity in about 30 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to pause you there. Thank you very much for all of you who are filling those in there. So if you have, I could see, if I look back to slide 2, I can see that a few people are feeling very confident with Desmos, but a number of you have sort of tried it out but not used it too much. So what we loved about Desmos is this really easy feedback that the teacher gets, that, you know, if we've got worries about a student who's having difficulties, we can pinpoint them and go and help them straight away. So thank you very much for all those responses. So in terms of what we found from our project, one of the aims was to look at engagement of students using Desmos, or using Desmos for blended learning. We've had a sense as we were teaching lessons that, yeah, the students were engaging with it, were enjoying it, were finding it useful. We did some individual student interviews. Some of them during the lockdown were done via breakout rooms on Zoom, so not ideal, but still got some really useful information. And yes, students were telling us they were enjoying it, they found it interesting, lots of variety, helped them understand more, and you know, thinking it was fun, just interesting things, little animations and things in there. The maths pedagogy within Desmos was one of the things that we really liked about it, and why we focused on it for our project. So we just got a few sort of examples of some of our students' responses while we were teaching some of these lessons. So I could see a lot of you, as we would expect, were quite comfortable with this question, but we can tell a lot to the student responses we were getting. And this is, it's sort of similar to using a mini whiteboard maybe in class. but we've got that summarized all on one screen, and we've got some quite detailed feedback here that if we can see misconceptions, we can go straight to those students. Or if we can see a common misconception, we can stop the class and talk to them and address that one misconception to the whole class. We found on these types of questions that students tended to work out the answer themselves and then see if it was the same as the example. So you can see that in the first one. They were comfortable working out the first one. They're not sure about the milk, it was different, but they're not sure why. So we can talk about that with the class if necessary, if we can see that was a common problem. The second one, the student we can see has worked this out correctly, but also they're working it out, but they can't really relate it to what they're seeing there. So we can talk through and see if someone in the class has identified the method that the student's using here. And then other students are picking up other problems with this, that we've got litres in the question and the answer's been given in pints. So they've got an issue with units of measurement there. On this one here, it's a diagnostic question. So I saw earlier people were using the diagnostic questions website for some of their sort of student interaction. Similar thing can be done on Desmos, and here we can see a clear misconception. Even though we're talking about, this was from our paint lesson, even though we're talking about a continuous variable, they're wanting the answer to be an integer answer, and therefore they've switched their ratio around, and they've explained it here so we can clearly see their misconception there, and we can address it straight to that student. And here, it's giving students a really, this student understands what's going on here and has had an opportunity to express that and communicate with us, and using really good mathematical language. So we've really got a good sense of where the student is, even though we're not in the classroom with them. In terms of using Desmos and the pedagogy within there, so what we've found in our teacher reflections on these lessons was that the most successful lesson in terms of the dialogue between the teacher and the student, and the type of feedback that the student was getting, that Desmos written lesson was the most successful. As you'd expect, they are the experts. So we found that, you can read the comments there, but we found that was the most successful. In terms of reflecting on the other lessons that we'd used, we found they were useful. We were getting very good responses from students, but we thought that maybe the standards unit one, we'd put too much of that lesson onto the Desmos, and we needed to pare it back a bit. We needed to make sure that our double number line work was flowing right through the lesson. And giving the student more feedback. All of us found that we were having to do a lot of work through Zoom and talking to the whole class, rather than Desmos taking some of that load, and sort of giving students more independence with it. And the simultaneous one, it was partly to do with the way the lesson was structured, and maybe we needed some more scaffolding there. So we were finding it really, really useful to go back and reflect on these lessons and sort of compare it to these professionally written lessons, and what could we do better to make them as useful. And then, as other people have been talking about, CPD was really important. So in terms of lesson delivery, we worked very well collaboratively as a department, sharing our best practice. Some of us had used Desmos before the pandemic arrived. We'd used it in the classroom. So moving that to using it remotely wasn't such a big step. So we were sharing our practice. We found external training courses. Some of us on the research project then used more the activity builder feature in Desmos, so you can very easily build a lesson. And then some of us wanted even more flexibility within the software, and actually sort of trained ourselves on the computation layer, again using some external training and some practice, some trial and error. So that's a sort of summary of what we found from our project. We will still continue to use Desmos next year. We think it's a brilliant package. It's brilliant in the classroom as well. It can pinpoint exactly who needs our help. And it's a real positive that we've taken out of this year and our experience with blended learning.